Is China making the Ukraine war much worse? The Ukraine war has completed 1 year, and there seems to be no end in sight. No international agency seems to be interested in bringing the war to a peaceful close. The US and the West are interested in supplying military weapons and other materials to Ukraine. Both the political parties in the US are competing with each other to give military aid to Ukraine. Nobody knows if that's helping Ukraine or is making Russia feel an urgency in taking out Ukraine's defense before it's too late. And here comes China. China claims to be on a peace initiative to bring the war to a conclusion. Is this a hopeful sign for an end to the war? Unfortunately, no, it's not. If you look closely at China's official statements and intentions, you'll see China only wants the war to escalate further, for its own gains. A quick peace in Ukraine is not in China's interests. We'll see why that's the case. China has been having turbulent relations with the United States for the past few years. It's an open secret that they are both in a race for world dominance. If the US and the West keep pumping money and military to Ukraine, it will deplete their ammunitions and financial resources. This works out well for China. China will also want Russia to be weakened so that they are dependent on China. China will then be able to dictate terms to Russia and control them. China also wants the US and the West to be tied in the Ukraine conflict for several years, so that they are unable to stop a Chinese invasion in Taiwan. The sanctions on Russia has worked very well for China economically. Russia is forced to sell their oil and gas to China at lower prices. China has used its own currency for a portion of the trade instead of the US dollar, further helping China. China has had several border disputes with Russia, and has never had a solid relationship in the past. China can annex some Russian territory, including the Russian port city of Vladivostok, if Russia is kept under their control. The whole of Europe, especially the Western Europe, is going through a high inflation. This inflation is caused by high gas and oil prices, since the cheaper Russian supplies have been greatly reduced by self-imposed restrictions. This has pushed Europe into an economic weaker position, which is something China will love to see. The Western European nations like Germany, UK and France have been strong allies of the US. They are now suffering heavily under inflation and weaker economy. This creates a situation where Western Europe will either break their close ties with the US or become poorer if the war continues in Ukraine. Both the outcomes are preferable for China. The Ukrainian President, Volodymyr Zelensky, made a statement that if China sides with Russia, it will lead to World War III. This leaves the US and the West with two options. Either prevent China from entering the war by accepting China's terms and surrender, or take the risk of entering into a very dangerous world war. So China will gain just by threatening that they'll enter into the war. There seems to be no obvious downside to China if the Ukrainian war continues longer, but has plenty of benefits. On February 19, 2023, China has issued statements threatening the US and warned the Western Europe to break away from the US in this conflict. Hope the world realizes it's better to deal with Russia now than play into China's hands. Thanks for watching.